The Grand Inquisitor was first introduced in Star Wars Rebels as the primary antagonist of the first season. This series followed in the wake of the abrupt cancellation of the Clone Wars, which had developed into one of the most beloved Star Wars TV series. As a result, expectations for Rebels were incredibly high. Many fans, still reeling from the sudden end of the Clone Wars after Disney's acquisition of Lucasfilm, were understandably skeptical about the new animated series. However, one of the first pieces of concept art from Rebels immediately caught attention. An ominous-looking new character, identified only as the Inquisitor, flanked by stormtroopers. At this time, this was the first entirely new villain introduced in the Disney era of Star Wars, and from the start, I found his design quite striking. He exuded an eerie and imposing presence, and despite the heartbreak over the Clone Wars ending, I was intrigued to see where Rebels would take his new adversary. In Episode 5 of Season 1, the Grand Inquisitor made his formal debut. When the Ghost Crew visits Stygian Prime, they find themselves face to face with the Inquisitor for the first time. He effortlessly outclasses both Kanan and Ezra, showcasing a level of skill and confidence that instantly set him apart as a formidable opponent. What makes his introduction even more chilling is how calmly and methodically he approaches the fight. He isn't just defending Kanan, he's toying with him, mocking him and showing him how outclassed he is. Also, the moment he deduces Kanan's former master simply by observing his sloppy fighting form adds another layer to his menace. It tells us right away that this is a hunter who spent years studying the Jedi, learning their techniques and understanding their weaknesses. It makes sense. His entire job is to exterminate the remaining Jedi, and he takes true pride and joy in this. His combat style is another standout aspect of his character, as him being a practitioner of Makashi, just like Dooku, made him an incredibly entertaining duelist to watch. Throughout the first season, the Grand Inquisitor remains a constant threat. Every time he appears, the stakes are raised, and the Ghost Crew finds themselves at a severe disadvantage. Unlike many villains who suffer from inconsistent writing at times, the Grand Inquisitor is never treated as incompetent. He wins almost every battle he fights, and the only reason the heroes survive is through retreat, luck, or outside intervention. This makes his eventual defeat all the more satisfying because it's earned. By the time of his final confrontation with Kanan above Mustafar, the writing had laid the groundwork for his demise. Throughout the season, Kanan had been steadily improving as a fighter, learning from his past failures in their encounters. This duel was not just another clash, it was the culmination of Kanan's journey toward becoming the Jedi he was meant to be. His victory didn't feel cheap or forced, it was the result of his growth as a character. The way the Grand Inquisitor meets his end is also just quite epic. Rather than falling to his death in desperation, he chooses to let go. His final words, "There are some things far more frightening than death," are chilling, as they hint at his knowledge of what awaits him should he return to Darth Vader in failure. I think this moment cements him as more than just a disposable villain. He's a character who understands the terrifying power structure he serves under. He's ruthless, but he's also pragmatic, knowing that he's failed and accepting it. During his strong presence in Rebels, the Grand Inquisitor is often overlooked when discussing great Star Wars villains. This is likely due to the later introduction of heavyweights like Darth Vader, Maul, and Thrawn, all of whom inevitably overshadow him. But he deserves more recognition. He was not only a fantastic villain for Season 1, but his legacy continued beyond his initial run. In Rebels Season 2, it's revealed that he was once a Jedi Temple Guard, who was present during Ahsoka's trial and thus started questioning the Jedi Order's decisions, and his story is expanded even further in the Darth Vader comics, where we see that, even in death, Vader had trapped his spirit in eternal torment, forcing him to continue serving in agony. Unfortunately, his portrayal in Obi-Wan Kenobi was a massive disappointment. The live-action version of the Grand Inquisitor barely resembled the menacing figure from Rebels, both in appearance and personality. He felt like a watered-down version of the character, and his presence in the series did little to enhance his character, or anything, really. He could have been left out of the series and nothing would have changed. In my headcanon, that version of him doesn't exist. It's just far too removed from the character we saw in Rebels. What are your thoughts on the Grand Inquisitor? Do you agree that he's underrated, or do you think he gets the recognition he deserves? Hondo Ohnaka is a recurring character from the Clone Wars series and gives his best impression of Space Jack Sparrow. And he was the reason I decided to make this video in the first place, funnily enough. He's a charming and witty pirate who operates in one of the more morally gray areas of Star Wars. He's not just a simple villain or anti-hero, though. I like to see him as a businessman and an opportunist. Hondo's first appearance shows him out-tricking none other than Count Dooku, kidnapping him to ransom through the Republic. But he doesn't stop there. When Anakin and Obi-Wan arrive to confirm Dooku's capture, Hondo sees an even bigger payday and promptly kidnaps them as well. From the very start, he's established as someone who isn't bound by loyalty, honor, or ideology. His allegiance lies with profit and self-interest. But what makes Hondo such a compelling character is his depth. He's not just a greedy pirate caricature, he operates by his own sense of honor, one that never quite pushes him into being a good guy, but keeps him from being outright evil. He'll lie, cheat, steal, kill, and attack defenseless people if it serves his interests. In one episode, when he targets a peaceful farming village for their resources, he doesn't try to negotiate or sugarcoat his intentions, he ruthlessly attacks. If he wants something, he takes it, no questions asked. He is a pirate at the end of the day, yet despite his cutthroat nature, there's always something likable about him. He's not a brute. He's not cruel for the sake of it. He's a pirate, yes, but a gentleman pirate. He's not rude or crass, but if he needs to, he'll shoot you down and take your stuff, without an ounce of guilt or remorse. Perhaps this doesn't align with traditional heroic values, but that's exactly what makes him very enjoyable to watch. Furthermore, what really sets Hondo apart is that nothing he does is ever personal. Everything he does is simply business. The Jedi disrupt his plans, doesn't matter, he doesn't hold a grudge, just sees it as a business transaction that didn't go his way. He's not too proud to side with an old enemy if it means making a profit. And if you betray him, well, he's not going to hold a grudge. He'd have done the same thing if he were in your shoes, as he's shown with his men in the episode with Darth Marr trying to turn his men against him. Truly a pirate king at the height of his power. He has ships, men, and resources, and he knows how to use them. He does appear again later in Rebels, but there, all the depth of his character is reduced to a simple comic relief character, which is quite sad to see. Although it is explained in universe that it's because he's past his prime and no longer has the resources he used to have, and now just scrapes by with what he's got. But to sum it up, Hondo is the perfect example of a character who thrives in the gray areas of Star Wars. He's not a villain, but he's far from a hero. He operates outside the rules of the galaxy, guided only by his own interests. And yet, for all his scheming, he's never cruel without reason and doesn't kill without a reason. At the end of the day, Hondo is a survivor. He plays both sides, switches allegiances, and always manages to land on his feet. And while he may be a pirate through and through, he's the kind of pirate you can't help but love. What do you think? Does Hondo deserve more recognition from fans? Nien Nunb, or Pancake Face as I refer to him, is this fun guy you see in Episode 6 Return of the Jedi in the Falcon alongside Lando. And boy do I wish we got to see more of him. Why do I like him so much? Well, mainly I'm quite biased due to the 2015 Battlefront where you got to play him as a hero character, but let me tell you, it wasn't always that way. Let's turn the clock back to 2015 when the new DICE Battlefront had just launched. I was never a huge gamer and had only played the old Battlefront games and FIFA up until then, but when this came out, I immediately got myself a new computer with improved graphics cards in order to play it. I was so hyped for it. Imagine the disappointment, though, that the game only released with 6 heroes, with further DLCs in the future promising to introduce more heroes. And then, when the first 2 DLC heroes were announced, fans were left completely baffled. Greedo and Nien Nunb. Let that sink in. In a game that is supposed to rival the old Battlefront games where you had around 20 beloved heroes to pick from and was missing so many main characters like Obi-Wan, Chewbacca, Lando, and whoever else, we get friggin' Nien Nunb of all people. Fans were pissed. Battlefront players were running up the walls of the DICE office demanding for Obi-Wan Kenobi as a hero, but not all hope was lost. Turns out Nien Nunb was actually a very fun character. He was super cool to play as, had a lot of different gimmicks in-game, and it made me go and look up what else his character's about. Did you know that before he became a hero of the Rebellion, Nien Nunb was one of the top pilots on Solust? He started off as a smuggler working for the Sorosub Corporation, but when the Empire took over, he turned against them. Using his smuggling skills, he began stealing from the company and redirecting supplies to aid the rebellion. And he didn't just do it in secret, he made sure his defiance was public, inspiring other Solustans to join the fight. In doing so, he basically built an entire Solustan rebel cell by himself. Even Admiral Akbar recognized his incredible talent, once saying, "None can fly anything, in any conditions." His skill as a pilot was absolutely instrumental in the Battle of Endor. While Lando was busy leading the assault on the Death Star, it was Nien Nunb's quick thinking and technical awareness that helped him navigate the chaos. Without him, the Millennium Falcon might not have made it out in one piece. He does also appear in the sequels piloting an X-Wing and even survives the sequels, which, considering their track record of killing original trilogy characters, is quite an achievement in and of itself. Also, his call-outs and laugh are simply legendary.
Yeah. Sete. Fepatanesh unterpretama.
For a character who started as a relatively minor figure, Nien Nunb has a good enough backstory. He might not be a Jedi, a Sith, or a legendary bounty hunter, but he's a hero in his own right. And thanks to Battlefront, I'll always have a special appreciation for Pancake Face. Plo Koon is one of the most underappreciated Jedi Masters in the Star Wars universe. Though he has always had a dedicated fan following, he often gets overshadowed by more prominent Jedi like Obi-Wan, Windu, or Yoda. However, beneath his calm demeanor and distinctive Keldor appearance lies a fascinating and honorable Jedi Master who played a vital role in the Order. He wasn't just another Jedi Master, he embodied the wisdom and compassion that made the Jedi great. Let me elaborate. While some Jedi Masters like Windu were strict and kind of distant, Plo Koon always demonstrated a deep respect for clone troopers and those under his command, truly seeking to connect with them. He's probably the most compassionate Jedi out there, and I feel like this scene truly symbolizes his entire character.
We're meant to be expendable.
Not to me.
And this was in the second ever episode of Clone Wars. Also, his treatment of Anakin is unlike most other Jedis as well. During the second Battle of Geonosis, Luminara Unduli coldly tells Anakin that he must be ready to let go of Ahsoka if the time comes, which reflects the Order's philosophy of detachment. But Plo Koon? He takes a completely different approach when Ahsoka was kidnapped by the Trandoshans. Instead of reinforcing the idea of severing emotional ties, he reassures Anakin, telling him to trust in Ahsoka's abilities, in the training and wisdom he's imparted to her. This moment speaks volumes about Plo Koon's character. He doesn't believe in shutting down emotions or making them feel obsolete. Instead, he teaches balance, an approach that would have made him a better mentor for Anakin than Obi-Wan perhaps ever was. Instead of ignoring Anakin's fear or loss, Plo Koon tried to help him understand it, face it, and ultimately overcome it. Plo Koon's bond with Ahsoka Tano is one of the most underrated relationships in Star Wars. He was the one who found her and brought her into the Jedi Order, and he remained deeply protective of her throughout her life. While Anakin was Ahsoka's official master, Plo Koon was always there for her, offering guidance and support when she needed it most. This makes the tragedy of her wrongful banishment from the Jedi Order even more heartbreaking. While the Council ultimately turned against her, it was Plo Koon who was said to be the only Jedi on the Council to vote against it. In the scene before the final verdict is given, the Council says, though we are not all in agreement, implying that at least one Jedi fought for her innocence. It is widely believed that this Jedi was Plo Koon. Only thing missing was him actively speaking up for Ahsoka during the arc. Knowing all this makes his death even more tragic during Order 66, as it was basically a split second in which one of the greatest Jedi was shot down. So yeah, wanted to talk about Plo Koon a bit as I feel like some people in the mainstream really don't talk about him enough. Wedge Antilles is easily one of the most underrated and unrepresented characters in Star Wars history. While Luke Skywalker, Han Solo, and Leia Organa get most of the recognition for their roles in the Rebellion, Wedge quietly racks up an insane list of achievements that would put most of the main cast to shame. He is, without question, the greatest non-Force-sensitive pilot in the saga, a true ace who survives battle after battle while playing a crucial role in the downfall of the Empire. Here's just a short list of some of the major battles he participated in: Battle of Scarif, Battle of Yavin, Battle of Hoth, and Battle of Endor. He was part of every major rebellion victory and also played a key role in a lot of them. In the Battle of Yavin, he's the only pilot alongside Luke to survive the Death Star trench run while also taking down several TIE fighters on the way. He's the only pilot alongside Luke to take down an AT-AT during the Battle of Hoth, and he basically assists the Millennium Falcon during the second Death Star's destruction, destroying it alongside the Falcon and making it out of there. There's a strong argument to be made that Wedge is the single best pilot in Star Wars. Yes, even better than Luke, Han, and maybe even Anakin, because unlike Luke, Wedge wasn't born with the Force guiding his instincts. everything Wedge accomplished was purely the result of talent and skill. He's also one of the original trilogy characters to outlive the original trio in the Disney sequels, which, just like for Nien Nunb, is a huge accomplishment and even participates in the Battle of Exegol if you see that as canon. And yet, despite everything he's done, Wedge never seeks glory. He's never cocky about his achievements, never tries to make himself the center of attention, he just does his job and keeps moving forward. In a galaxy filled with hotshot pilots, Jedi prodigies, and Sith Lords, Wedge is the one guy who survives it all without any of that. If there were any justice in the galaxy, the New Republic surely gave Wedge Antilles a fat pension and lifetime healthcare for everything he's done. Because, let's be honest, he's basically the galaxy's most competent employee. Wedge Antilles deserves way more recognition than he gets. He's not just some background character who got lucky. He took down TIEs, led squadrons, took out walkers, destroyed Death Stars, and helped shape the New Republic. And he did it all without the Force. In short, Wedge Antilles is the ultimate rebel badass. R5-D4 is the red astromech droid from A New Hope with the famously bad motivator. Luke Skywalker's journey might have ended before it even began if not for a small but crucial twist of fate. When Uncle Owen attempted to buy the red astromech from the Jawas on Tatooine, the droid broke down just moments before the sale was finalized. However, did you know that this was a planned act? R2 at first attempted to sabotage R5 in the Sandcrawler to ensure that he would be the only astromech to be sold. However, R5 woke up during R2's act and they started talking. R2 told him that the fate of the galaxy was dependent on him being sold. Realizing what was at risk, R5 deliberately sabotaged himself, loosening the hinge on his headplate and redirecting lubricant to create a visible malfunction. When he finally discharged power, his headplate popped off, making it appear as though he had a faulty motivator. This clever act ensured that Uncle Owen would purchase R2-D2 instead, allowing him to continue his mission with Luke Skywalker. As R2 was taken away, he thanked R5 for his sacrifice, promising never to forget him. R5's story doesn't end there, though. He survived the stormtrooper attack on the Sandcrawler, and then tried to find a way into the rebellion himself. He succeeded, and ended up being the astromech of Carson Teva. After the end of the Empire, R5 somehow found himself serving EV-99 in the Mos Eisley Cantina, and those several stops ended up working for Pelimato, and finally the Mandalorian Din Djarin. Alongside Djarin, he helped in the liberation of Mandalore and plays the crucial role in deactivating the shields of Moff Gideon's base. Truly an underrated little droid. Glad the Mandalorian tried to involve him more. Cin Drallig is one of the most skilled Jedi Masters during the Clone Wars era. As the Battle Master of the Jedi Order, he was the leading instructor in lightsaber combat at the Jedi Temple, training generations of Jedi, including Obi-Wan Kenobi and Anakin Skywalker. He isn't recognized at all, really, but actually being the Battle Master, I feel like he could have been involved a lot more. It would have been great to see him actually fight in the Clone Wars, but obviously that wasn't his role. But surely he could have been asked for advice and such at times. Also, he was the last true guardian of the Jedi Temple during Order 66, and he also had a final stand against his former student Anakin before being slain. He does appear a few times in the Clone Wars and also in the Revenge of the Sith video game, but not in any relevant way, really. Rather, just as the head of the Temple Guards. Really wish we'd see more of him as a character, as I just really like Battle Master Jedi class. Director Orson Krennic from Rogue One is one of the most unique villains in Star Wars, and I think he's severely underrated. Krennic is quite unique, not because of his power or ideology, but because of how human he is. He's not a Sith seeking galactic domination, nor a fanatical Imperial. He's simply a man who wants to be good at his job, be recognized for it, and climb the corporate ladder. He does certainly believe in the Empire's cause of control with power, however, it doesn't appear that Krennic is driven by malice or cruelty for its own sake. His ambition is rooted in something far more relatable, the desire for validation. He poured years of his life into the creation of the Death Star, and all he wants is to be acknowledged for his achievement and gain more influence through it. So you could look at him as the idea that some history's worst atrocities are not always committed by monsters, but by individuals simply doing their jobs without questioning the consequences. But don't get me wrong, Krennic is not a good person with good intentions. He's selfish, a power struggler, and seems rather indifferent to the lives lost in pursuit of his ambitions. When firing the Death Star laser in Rogue One, he simply calls it a beautiful sight, despite the millions of lives he destroyed through it. In the Rogue One prequel novel Catalyst, his manipulative nature is explored in even greater depth, particularly in his relationship with Galen Erso. In case you were unaware, they used to be friends in high school, and later on in their lives he rescued Galen and his family from separatist imprisonment. Krennic then, under the pretense of science, convinced Galen to conduct research on an energy project, which, unbeknownst to Galen, Krennic was planning to weaponize. Krennic shows throughout the book that he does care about Galen as a friend to some degree, but also rather sees him as a means to an end, a brilliant scientist whose work he can exploit to construct the Death Star's weapon. The ends he goes to keep Galen happy and cooperative in the book truly shows him being a master in manipulation, and it shows just how far Krennic is willing to go to achieve his goals. The intricacies of his power struggle with Tarkin is also very interesting, as he's always trying to one-up Tarkin, but ends up failing. His relationship with Tarkin as a superior is also just full of references to the real world. A project leader in a big corporation that had given some of the biggest contribution to the company's earnings, only for their boss to take all the credit for it and saying, yeah, I ordered its creation and did oversee the project, despite not really being involved in it in detail. So of course someone as ambitious as Krennic would then be in agony for not getting the recognition he deserved. In Battlefront 2015, he's actually also playable as a hero character, and literally one of his emote lines is, "Soon I'll be the Emperor's closest confidant." So, yeah, he wants recognition and power, but the way he goes about it is just rather interesting. What makes Krennic a compelling villain as well is that, in another context, he might not have been a villain at all. He does not seek to rule the galaxy or unleash destruction for its own sake. He's simply an ambitious bureaucrat who climbed the ranks and did what was asked of him, never stopping to question the morality of his actions. It is quite poetic, then, that all his ambition and search for validation led him to be killed by the very thing he used to try and gain all these valors. Darth Marr is one of the most compelling Sith Lords in Star Wars, as he stands apart from the usual archetype of treacherous, power-hungry Sith. He was neither a scheming manipulator nor a reckless conqueror. Marr was a warrior, a strategist, and above all, an absolute believer in the Sith Empire. Unlike many Sith who sought power for personal gain, Marr's loyalty was to the Empire itself. He saw strength not in domination and betrayal, but in unity, making him a rare figure among the Sith. As a member of the Dark Council, Marr commanded the sphere of defense of the Empire. While others on the Council wasted time on infighting and political maneuvering, Marr focused on the real war, the struggle against the Republic and the Jedi. He had no patience for petty rivalries or fragile egos. To him, the Sith Order's obsession with internal conflict was a weakness, one that constantly threatened to undo everything the Empire had built, and it led to them slowly losing the war against the Republic. He believed in strength, but unlike many Sith who viewed it as an individual superiority, Marr saw true strength in the endurance and survival of the Empire itself. This philosophy made him both respected and feared, as he was one of the few Sith Lords willing to make difficult decisions that others would not. Furthermore, Marr was also a pragmatist. After recognizing the Sith Emperor Vitiate's plan to exterminate all life in the galaxy, and learning that Revan Reborn was planning on reviving the fallen Emperor, he negotiated a truce with the Republic in order to fight a greater evil together to stop the Emperor from returning. Although their combined efforts did succeed in stopping Revan, Vitiate did return in the form of Valkorion. While searching for Vitiate in the unknown regions, Darth Marr's ship is ambushed by Valkorion's Eternal Fleet. Marr and the Outlander are captured and brought in front of Valkorion, Vitiate's reincarnation. There he refuses to join Valkorion despite being offered a position alongside him, and rather tries to attack him. Unfortunately, he gets killed by Valkorion, but this act also shows he isn't a normal Sith. Any other Sith would have certainly, out of self-preservation, joined Valkorion without a second thought, but not Darth Marr. So he really isn't a traditional Sith, despite basically leading the Sith Empire, as these actions really sound more like one of a Jedi, someone willing to sacrifice or fight for a bigger cause other than themselves. And what's even more, he goes on to become a Force Ghost, as he at that point had embedded the light side of the Force, and continues to help the Outlander and her team stop Valkorion. Truly an underrated character that I feel like never gets talked about nor mentioned, and isn't even really known in the wider Star Wars fanbase. Lord Scourge is one of the most fascinating and morally complex Sith Lords. Introduced in the Darth Revan book, he's quite the opposite of Darth Marr, but in the end serves a similar goal. During his service for Emperor Vitiate, Scourge realizes that the Emperor needs to be stopped, and thus starts helping Revan, whom he had built a relationship with during Revan's capture, and Mitra Surik in attempting to kill the Emperor. The trio made it all the way to the throne room when he suddenly gets a Force vision where he sees the Emperor's death, but not at the hands of Revan and Surik, but rather another Jedi. So, in an act of self-preservation, he kills Mitra Surik by stabbing her in the back, leading to Revan's capture yet again and foiling the attempt on killing the Emperor. This act leads him to becoming the Emperor's wrath, granting him immortality and serving as the Emperor's personal executioner, waiting and biding his time until the moment of his vision came to fruition. For 300 years, he did the Emperor's bidding, killing countless people until one day he met the hero of Tython, a young Jedi who had recently tried to make an assassination attempt on the Emperor, but ultimately fell under the Emperor's powerful influence. However, the hero was able to break free from the Emperor's control, and thus Scourge knew that this was the Jedi from his vision all these years ago. He quickly frees the hero and helps him escape to the Republic. There, he reveals to the Republic of the Emperor's plan to destroy the universe and becomes an ally of the Republic, and even goes as far as to aid in the final battle against the Emperor in Ka City. So yeah, unlike many Sith, whose motivations are rooted in personal ambition, Scourge's story is one of cold, brutal calculation. Of course, he was a Sith and did follow the Sith path. However, after seeing firsthand the devastating truth about Darth Vitiate and realizing that Vitiate's grand design would destroy everything, Jedi and Sith alike, he changed his mind. Instead of blindly following orders or attempting a hopeless rebellion, he chose a different path, believing to wait and bide his time to stop the Emperor, but never leaving the focus and still keeping that goal in mind. I just find him quite an interesting character, as he was very evil, and he killed Mitra Surik, which he should be sent to hell for, but still, it's a compelling story and I find him an interesting character. He basically does everything to keep himself alive to see through on his vision. In the twisted Sith way, despite personally killing thousands of people as the Emperor's wrath, he truly believed he was doing the right thing for the greater good of the galaxy. And that's it for my list. Let me know if you agree, whom do you disagree on, who else I missed, and like the video and subscribe.